This video is sponsored by Unusual Horror. To see the fully uncut version of this video, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
I said, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's going on? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review for Cryptic Plasm. Written and directed by Paulin, Cryptic Plasm stars! All of these. The story is about David Gates, a cryptozoologist who is hired to film his investigations. One of them being a mysterious town where all its inhabitants have vanished without a trace. David uncovers far more than he anticipated and puts his own life at risk. What's going on, you lot? It's that time again. Time to smash our faces into another low-budget splatterfest by the master of what the Paulin. Brian once again chooses another part of the genre to depict. Totally separate from his action vampire movie At Dawn They Sleep and whatever the was going on in Theaters. Here we have something more in the style of the Blair Witch Project as cryptozoologist David and his cameraman Brian investigate various paranormal goings on. Unlike the other films I've seen from Brian, this one really takes its time to get to the good stuff, and it puts a lot of pressure on the first two acts to be entertaining without the gore. Is Cryptic Plasm successful in that regard? Let's find out. But before we get into all of that, I just want to remind you, you can see this video completely uncut and early at patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons for as little as $2 a month. The Patreon is the only way I'm able to keep this channel going and indeed a roof over my head, so if you like the content and want to support further journeys into the abyss, chipping away more and more at what little sanity I have left, go and donate now. And if you don't have $2 but still like the content, please click subscribe. I'd really love to hit 20k by the end of the year, so if you want to help me do that, please just click that button. It's free and I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, I'm in the mood to be bored and confused for the first two acts and then continuously for the last one, so let's not waste any more time. Get ready to see a hell of a lot of interdimensional. This is Cryptic Plasm. The movie begins with shots of this small town, then to a girl getting in the pool and various townsfolk getting on with their business. The girl's mother starts to look up into the sky as we see this fella elsewhere doing the same. We see don't know where it came from start dripping onto the kitchen sink, then this guy's face with a sudden flash of light hits and things go to hell, with a lot of people splitting open and melting. Oh, and don't forget that one person coughing up what looks like a cross between a pig's tail and a giant veiny. The light flashes again and everyone vanishes, leaving behind a table dripping in baby gravy and this little squirrel.
Oi, mate.
Who? Me?
Yeah, you. Come here.
Okay. What's up?
I've got the power to give people cancer.
What? Really?
Yeah, and I'll give it to you unless you get me some nuts.
But I haven't got any nuts.
Yeah, you have, boy. You know what I mean. Nut in Mr. Squirrel's face or I'll give you cancer.
Okay.
Squirrel wants his nuts.
Cut to the opening credit sequence featuring a lot of goopy stuff that I presume was people at one point and off-center text placement that really annoyed me. Cut to this guy in the super cool sunglasses, David, as he walks around the woods seemingly filming nothing. He then turns the camera on himself saying he's back here filming and just heard the exact same sound he heard when he was here the previous night. Something out there in the woods knocking down trees. He says he's gonna head off in the direction of the sound when we get this hilarious cut moments later. Is it me, or does David run like he's either shit himself or is just about to? The man flips the camera on again and says something came running at him in the woods. He didn't get a good look at them, but I guess it was good enough to send him sprinting out of there. I say sprinting, but running as fast as his little legs can carry him is probably a better description. He continues to search when something throws a bit of wood at him.
Wow. That was some really impressive stuff.
Was it though? This bloke Richard is a producer of some nature and is so impressed with David's little video he says he's gonna commission a pilot. He asks how many crew he's gonna need, but David says he knows a very good cameraman and would prefer to keep the crew down to 2. Richard agrees, then gives David the number of a producer, Martin, who says he'll provide him with all the equipment he needs. David thanks him as we cut to him meeting up with the cameraman Brian, played by writer, director and all-round sex machine Brian Paulin. David pitches the show to him saying Richard is financing 4 episodes which he's then going to shop around to networks. He then shows Brian his research, saying he's managed to track down a lake creature in Massachusetts. The plan is to go, camp out for 3 days and hopefully capture some footage of this mythical creature. Then next on their list will be heading to an abandoned town. Brian expresses his excitement for what they're about to do and they agree to leave in 2 days. Cut to a hose, this cute little spider, and then to Brian and David packing up their equipment. They set off all excited and we drive with them as the movie switches to a more found footage style. The men finally arrive at their destination as the rain hammers down on them and thunder cracks in the distance. Cut to David giving us an update from their tent. A tent which, if you don't mind me saying, might be the tent of all time.
Okay, so we made it to the lake just like we wanted to. It's about 6:30. We had hoped to get some investigation in today, but as you can see, the rain did not let up as we wanted it to. We had to hastily put up the tent to get the equipment inside. And now we're just kind of stuck in here and see if the rain stops and see what we get.
And the interior shots is just somebody holding a sheet of plastic behind him and wobbling it about. Low budget filmmaking, ladies and gentlemen. I love it. Also, just for a bit of fun, we're going to put up a counter for every time we see this blue light. Cut to morning as the guys pick a spot for the show's introduction.
Hi, I'm David Gates. Over the last 10 years, I've been all across America looking for the strange and unusual. Today, we're in a small New England town where locals have reported seeing a large creature in the waters.
We watch as David talks about the lake creature and what it could be when suddenly the pair hear a strange noise coming from the bushes. They run around to try and find the source of the sound, but only find what looks like an abandoned camp. Our heroes then discuss who could have been staying here.
Hello, ripped to shreds.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that.
I'm gonna go with this previously being a homeless suck job emporium. I don't have any concrete proof, but I know a homeless suck job emporium when I see one. They call their discovery weird and we cut back to the quote-unquote tent. The pair then hear a noise which Brian describes as sounding like an animal crying. And that's pretty much it. Hey, look, it's okay. The movie's just taking its time to build suspense. It's all leading up to something amazing. I just know it. Cut to the pair walking in front of Brian Paulin's one and only blue light as things get extremely Blair Witch. David points in the direction of the sound as they get louder and we cut to something writhing around in the bushes. Which is almost certainly not my dad searching for the former homeless suck job emporium. Whatever it is, we hear it jump into the water and Brian swings the camera around wildly before cutting to morning. Brian returns from a monster search saying he can't find anything and David tells him they're going to stick around for a couple of hours as he knows something is out here and he just wants to catch it on film. Brian grabs his camera and they look around in silence some more when Brian has an encounter.
Holy shit, David!
What the f was that supposed to be? Surely it's just a gator. You lot have got gators in Massachusetts, right? I don't know, I just assumed all of the United States is covered in gators. With guns. Can't wait to move there. Brian calls over David, telling him he just captured footage of something's tail. The excited men then think they see something on the other side of this completely unjumpable canal and go chasing after it when we get this very interesting cut.
Come on! Come on! Let's go!
Oh my god, did Brian get attacked? What was the creature? They got such an amazing close-up shot. I can't wait to see what happens next. Unfortunately, we cut to David and Richard, who raves about the footage, saying it's so good they could split it into 2 episodes. 2 episodes? How long is each episode, Richard? I know he says some creative editing will be involved, but Jesus. I desperately wish we could see the finished product. Richard then tells David he wants him to go to the abandoned town next, to which he agrees. Acting as if he's really excited Rich is asking him to when I thought this was already the plan. Lake monster, abandoned town. Cut to our heroes back on the open road before getting treated to another show intro.
Now we're heading to a small town just beyond these woods. Now because of government ties, we have to be a bit secretive about this investigation.
Good lord, look at that pose. Such a powerful and commanding stance. The kind of style that says, hey, did we just make eye contact? Well, congratulations, you're pregnant. He says they're gonna have to leave the car as there's no real road into the town anymore, so they set off slowly trudging through the woods. They finally get to the edge of the woods as Brian wonders if the town is actually abandoned.
It's already kind of creepy already.
Kind of creepy. Did you feel that?
The ever-increasing feeling of boredom? Yes, David. Yes, I do. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. David explains the abandoned town, describing it as like any other suburb except completely devoid of people. He wonders if the government had something to do with it, saying that's why they need to be cautious. The men continue to search the town, passing a leaf as they do, as well as a mailbox. Mailbox is a great name for a gay punk band, by the way. You can have that one for free. Finally, they reach this road when there's a sudden flash of light and David goes down.
Dave. Hey. You alright? Oh, I got a headache. What's the matter?
Brian asks him if he's okay, and David says as well as his instant headache, he feels weak and tired all of a sudden. He gets himself together as Brian wonders if David's condition is linked to the town, and they press on. Sometime later, David spots movement in one of the houses and the pair rush to investigate, finding nothing. Brian then spots a game in the middle of play, adding further evidence to the residents' disappearance being sudden. They go to where David saw the movement, but again find nothing of note. David goes to head upstairs when they hear another noise and go to investigate. Brian goes to check out the backyard when we finally get to see something interesting.
What? Dave. What's the matter? What's the matter?
This might surprise you, but I really like that shot. Nice and creepy. Upon seeing this, David and Brian book it back to the woods where we see this.
What's up? Hey, what's wrong?
Less nice and creepy. Brian demands to know what's going on, but David isn't able to provide an answer, instead stumbling off into the woods. We then cut to David as he explains to camera his very first guess as to what's going on.
I think it might have been a wormhole has opened up over this town and is causing some of the spectacular and amazing things that we've seen today.
A wormhole, you say there, David? Yeah? A wormhole? That's your first guess? I mean, you're right, but that's a pretty wild first assumption. He says this could be how the townsfolk vanished and says they should wall off the town as it's too dangerous. They're barely able to understand what's going on their side and can't imagine what's going on the other. We get some more shots of nature, then cut to David vomiting at home. Cut to the moon and then to David waking up on the floor in a different part of the house, similar to Kevin in Fetus. He has a vision of himself as a zombie bathed once again in that single blue light, then goes back to rubbing his head. Cut to the moon again and then to David getting a phone call from producer Martin. He has information on an exorcism going down in New Jersey and has a feeling this will be the episode that gets them noticed. Back to more shots of David silently driving and then to them pulling up outside the house. David says he's not crazy about an exorcism as he deals in crypto, not religious freaks, and Brian agrees, saying he doesn't know shit about this kind of stuff.
I'll get it all on camera for you.
All right, let's go.
This might just be me, but that look that Brian gives at the end of his line makes me think that he's waiting for David to turn around and give him a little kiss. Instead, they get out and approach the building. Once they get inside the 100% same house they shot the exteriors of, the minister gives David info which he relays to Brian. David calls the minister a little unorthodox and tells Brian not to expect a Christian exorcism, but no matter what, they have to keep on filming. They head inside and there's that blue light again as we see the possessed girl in the center of the room. The minister does a bit of Reiki, but shockingly that doesn't seem to work. Then there's a lot of around and creepy sounds until eventually the girl rips her chest open. And then everything goes from 0 to as the girl attacks the minister. What the is that coming out of her? A tree branch? Whatever it is, it's now wearing that brother's head as a hat. Our heroes get the out of there, and in the car, Brian asks what they're gonna do. At David's, he says Brian can crash there tonight and goes to lie down as both are feeling zonked out from their previous experience. Sometime later, David joins Brian at the table. Brian's worried they might be wanted by the law after witnessing the deaths of 2 men and suggests they hand the footage over to the police. David convinces him not to do anything until he speaks to Martin, to which Brian agrees. David then asks Brian if he's feeling okay, as he's been feeling like shit ever since they left that abandoned town.
I felt sick ever since we left that town. I'm worried that whatever happened to me there might have opened me up to what happened with that preacher.
I'll open you up, David. Arsehole first. Split you right down the middle, you s***.
What if whatever happened to me in that town displaced my biology into 2 places at once? What if I'm slowly being absorbed into that wormhole and in the process absorbing whatever was possessing that girl?
I'll slowly absorb you into my wormhole, and by wormhole, I mean arsehole. Or my new name for arsehole, toilet. I just want you to know, David, that when I shout Bisto. For those of you that don't know, Bisto is a really popular instant gravy brand in the UK. It makes sense for me because my is the same consistency as thick gravy. It's also brown and smells like beef and onions. Brian says he doesn't look possessed, but instead someone in dire need of a lawyer, and David calms down, apologizing for overreacting. He tells Brian to get some sleep and heads out as we cut to morning. David again says he's going to call Martin and tell him everything, and Brian says he's going to check the footage of the town to see if there's anything of interest on there. They say their goodbyes, and we cut to the city as Richard calls Martin. He tells him their monster hunter friends are panicking about what they saw. And to resolve this issue, an issue that wasn't our hero's fault, nor should they be charged for, they decide on this.
Well, the idea did actually cross my mind about that special project we discussed. That's it. These 2 could be the perfect candidates.
They're gonna have them whacked. Whacked! Can you believe that sh**? Cut to a plane, instant production value there, as Brian been watching Neil Breen's film school DVDs. And then to David getting a call from Martin where he's given the bad news that none of the networks are interested in the show.
Are you canceling the show?
Yeah.
He tells him he can blame it on that redneck squatch hunter, meaning Brian, and David breaks down. Cut to Brian editing when apparently he sees something in the footage. Now, I've looked at this over and over, and what we're supposed to be seeing is a body flying up into the sky. Anyway, he leaves David a voicemail telling him as much, and then we cut to Richard talking to the hitman. He tells him to kill the boys at the filming location and to make it look as nasty as possible. They'll then submit a missing persons report, and when they're found, release the footage for maximum impact. And then release a documentary about their deaths.
It'll be ratings gold, because I guarantee you, the audience is going to want to stick around to see those dead bodies.
I think you might be overestimating David's charisma and likability with the audience, but whatever. I'd watch it, but then again, I do watch any old shit, don't I? Cut to David having another migraine and Brian leaving him another message some days later. He tells him he's going to go back to the woods outside the abandoned town to look for more evidence and apologizes for calling Richard before. Cut to Brian pulling up at David's place. He knocks but doesn't get an answer, so jumps back in the car and heads to the woods himself, where he walks past a tree covered in. Could someone in the comments tell me the location of this forest? Asking for my dad. Overhead, he sees a helicopter which he hides from for no real reason at all other than the fact that there was one flying that day and production value! Brian takes a seat as we see some birds, then cut to nighttime as Brian films the darkness. He sits there for at least a minute straight when to his side we see the hitman emerging. Then, just as Brian is about to get it, the hitman is eaten by a tree. Sweet heavenly Jesus, what the f***? What the f*** is that shit? Is that red paint and mustard? Why the f*** does the hitman bleed red paint and mustard? Why is the tree eating him? What the f*** is going on here? Run, Brian! Run for your f*** life! Cut to Martin's place where he's chilling in the basement on the phone pretending to write in a notebook. Also, I love this shot because it looks like the scene starts just a beat too early. I can't remember the term that Red Letter Media came up with for it, but it looks like the camera's rolling just before the director says action.
Okay, that sounds good.
He's just completely still, then action.
Okay, that sounds good.
Martin is finalizing a deal to direct whatever new slot Marvel is dumping on Disney Plus next when he puts down the phone and hears a noise outside. He goes to investigate, and while he doesn't see anything, he does hear a noise that makes him think, this, I'm out. Then back in the basement, he goes to make a call when he's suddenly headbutted by the table. Next, his face starts melting and pouring blood. And finally, everything starts dripping upwards, followed by Martin, who's pulled into the air with such force that the table leg goes through his head. So when me and my girlfriend, Sasha X Voorhees on Instagram, go give her a follow, when we watched this originally, we were like, is it the wood that's evil? You see, the hitman got eaten by a tree, and the table is made of trees, so in the other dimension are trees like top of the food chain or something. What the f going on? Anyway, that scene ends and we cut to Brian pulling up at David's place, this time actually going inside. He calls out for his friend but doesn't get a response, so heads further into the darkness. Brian chases after David and we get this really cool shot as the monster appears behind him. He tries to ask what happened and offers to go get help when we get my favourite shot of the movie. In the full scene, we get 22 seconds of the finest I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here acting that I've ever seen. It's breathtaking. I genuinely love it. David attacks Brian, who gives his friend a quick lick with a stick, then impales him with it. Undeterred, David snaps that shit off when another hand pushes its way through his chest and we see it's a fresh-looking David being born Nightmare on Elm Street 2 style. Brian then gets facialized and trapped in a door. Yeah, that's right. Thought this movie was boring, did ya? Now a just been drowned in interdimensional cum and is trapped in a door. Didn't have that on your YouTube bingo card today, did you, folks? Brian Paulin is my hero. Evil David then rips Tummy David's head completely in half. And gets on. He then pulls off his melting flesh and removes the last of Tummy David as gallons of blood splash across the floor. Back with Door Brian, he sees a new addition to the room. A fleshy gateway that looks like my dad's arsehole after a night out with the lads. Through this door emerges Evil Brian, making our Brian pull this face, which I'm a massive fan of. Evil Brian then pulls the same face while explaining to him they're not allowed to occupy the same space. Smoke then attacks the building, causing a bit of wood to strike Evil Brian and split his head open. We see multiple other victims in the grasp of whatever the this monster is, as blood flies in every direction and everyone screams. The thing from the tree then makes an appearance and nongs on Evil David, tearing him in half in an epic effect. And at this point, everyone's just getting sucked into holes covered in goo, melted, and generally having the worst possible time. Next, Brian gets his face impaled by a bunch of tentacles, then gets torn out the door. Finally, everything in the room is destroyed apart from the blue light as we cut to Richard in the city. It seems he's been able to make the documentary and pre-orders are through the roof. He then looks up, some drips on his face, and the villain meets his maker. The end! Well, you had me worried there for a second, Brian, but you got me back at the end. The man can literally do no wrong. Cryptic Plasm is a film I have a lot of mixed feelings about. While it is true I enjoyed this one less than the other two films of Brian's I've covered, it's still an enjoyable little creep fest with a pretty remarkable ending. That being said, those first 40 minutes were difficult to get through. The story is simple enough, with us following a cryptozoologist and his fateful cameraman as they investigate strange goings on. After a visit to an abandoned town where all the residents were eaten by wormhole monsters, David becomes haunted by the other side. All of this then culminates in what I can confidently say is Brian Paulin's most spectacular gore sequence yet. Now, while looking up more info on this movie, I did see on IMDb that it was initially planned to be a series of web shorts following David and Brian around as they look at one supernatural event after another. Eventually, however, the decision was made to smash the various ideas into one film, and you can definitely see that in the finished product. The lake creature stuff especially feels like its own story, with none of what happens there bleeding over into the rest of the film. At least the abandoned town and exorcism have some sort of impact on the story, whereas the lake monster just serves to fill out time. Again, I did enjoy the new direction Paulin took with the story, but unfortunately it wasn't one that I massively enjoyed. Onto the characters, and there's not really much to say here. Everybody is at their usual level of anyone in a Brian Paulin movie. Brian gets a 10 out of 10 for effort as usual, when the guy that plays David does his best, and that's really about it. Richard also did well as the creep producer, with my girlfriend saying he's the type of guy that always says, "Hey, where's my hug?" Next is the gore, and you really do have to wait a while to get to the good stuff. Yes, we do get the opening, the possessed girl, and the killer table, but it isn't until the end that Paulin really gets to let loose, giving us what might be my favourite climax to any of his films so far. It's just absolute chaos, and I love it. Definitely worth sticking it out for. I'd love to know how long it took to shoot that. Presentation-wise, I really do love the Blair Witch found footage-inspired aesthetic we got going on here. Part of me does wish that Brian had gone for it completely, though. Instead, what we have here is a combination of found footage and more traditional filmmaking. Not saying that this would have made the film better, but it definitely would have made it more interesting. To me, at least. In the end, Cryptic Plasm is a fine, if slightly disappointing entry in the canon of Paulin. I think it's only because he set the bar of enjoyment so high with his previous films that I might be being slightly harsh on this one. It's fine for what it is, and again, I really did appreciate the new direction. I just have a bloodlust to satisfy, and the film taking as long as it did to get there made it difficult to finish. I saw one review on IMDb say to just watch the last 15 minutes, and while I don't agree with that, definitely be prepared for an uncharacteristically slow burn with a fantastic payoff. So that was my review for Cryptic Plasm. What do you lot think? This one was a lot slower than his other films, but I do respect him for not only having the restraint, but also just trying another style. All the films of his that I've reviewed so far have been so different from each other, and you've got to respect that in a filmmaker. And at least we get that signature Brian Paulin chaos at the end. Seeing Evil David tear Tommy David to pieces like wet paper was amazing. Speaking of which, if you want to see Brian Paulin get faced by tentacles completely uncut and early, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. There you can find the uncut version of this review, plus others with more stuff being added all the time. We got the uncut reviews, Patreon exclusive reviews, / comic breakdowns, the Discord, and commentaries coming soon. I actually filmed a commentary with Sasha Voorhees, and then we lost it when my old laptop died, but I'll get it back soon. And all that can be yours for as little as $2 a month. You can pledge more, I really appreciate it, because I need all the help I can get. I can't even convince my own dad to join the Patreon. Could it be because I've made him famous as a addicted toilet? Maybe. But still, join the Patreon. And if you want to get your hands on this sick septic t-shirt, go to store.unusualhorror.com. They got a bunch of stuff over there, from original designs to band collabs and extreme horror tees. All of it's officially licensed and super high quality, and if you use the promo code Jonjo, you get 10% off your order. That's promo code Jonjo for 10% off at store.unusualhorror.com. So that's it for another week. Like the video, leave a comment, and click subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Jonjo Lyons, and Brian, please cast me in one of your films. You can have a tentacle abuse any one of my orifices. I'll be like an interdimensional Chinese finger trap. 1 in the mouth, 13 in the butt. Let's make it happen.